Okay, so let's have a look at the file structure that we get when we download something from the RD Textures homepage. So we're getting an ambient occlusion map, which we can use to enhance the shadows maybe a little bit more later on if we are not completely satisfied. A bump map, of course. We're also getting all maps in 4 and 8K, so we can choose if we really want to go full resolution or maybe just a half resolution, maybe to save some RAM and stuff like that, depending on your machine, of course. Then we're also getting a color map, we're getting a depth map, which we can use later on for displacement, of course. Color map goes into the diffuse channel. Then we have a glossy map, which we can use, of course, in the specular channel. We're getting two different ones. We're getting a normal glossy one and a high glossy one, really depending on how much we want to have those roots, in this case, want to have how much light they pick up, how much highlight they will get. Then it also comes with a normal map. If you're maybe working with Unity, Unreal Engine, CryEngine, you name them, you can use those maps, of course. And then we're also getting a roughness map in 4 and 8K, which we can use in the glossiness channel or in the roughness channel, really depending on which render engine you're using. They're all called differently. Okay, so these are basically the maps that we are getting, and I will show you now how to set them up correctly. Okay, so first things first, we can set up a basic lighting here inside of 3D Max in V-Ray. Here we have our V-Ray toolbar, and we will just simply set up a simple plane light, or let's just simply call it an area light. Just drag it out. Whoops, not a second one, sorry about that. And let's take this here, and we can also rotate this by hitting the E key on our keyboard. And let's maybe rotate it something like that. Just really a basic lighting. Then we can hit the W key to get the move tool again, and holding down Alt and the middle mouse button to rotate here in the scene. I will just simply move this light here a little bit in the back, a little bit upwards, control middle mouse button to move like that, and then we will just simply scale that out a little bit, something like that, by hitting our R key. And then we'll just simply drag it out like this. And then we'll also create a basic plane. So let's go create standard primitives, and we'll just simply get a plane. Drag this out here in the scene as well. Something like that should be good enough for us. Not a second one. Whoops, my fault. And let's maybe also move this light a little bit more into the back and a little bit more upwards. This should do the trick, and this should be... It's just really a basic lighting setup. I mean, you can also set up a V-Ray sun if you want to. You can also set up maybe a sphere light, also a dome light if you want to use an HDRI. I would just go with a simple area light for this tutorial, because I think it's more than enough to show. Yeah, for what I want to show you, it's more than enough. Okay, so let's get to the next part. Okay, so let's jump to our basic settings that we might want to set up. I'm using V-Ray 3.50, by the way. At the moment, if you have a new version, it should be exactly the same, almost. So we can choose if we want to use normal V-Ray or V-Ray RT, so if you want to use our graphic card or not. If you want to choose RT, you can do that, of course, if you want to. The results should be exactly the same, so as you can see here. Here is RT, and if you change this now, or stop this here, and switch to normal V-Ray, you can see if we're using the CPU, of course, we're getting the exactly same result. I think you can leave everything by default for this scene, so we don't need to change anything here. We can just leave GI on, brute force light cache is just fine, and should be also the normal render method normally. So there isn't really much to change in this part, so I think we can all leave this here at a default value. And so yeah, in the next chapter we will just simply jump right in and set up our first displacement map. Alright, so let's set up the displacement map. We can just simply click the M key on our keyboard to bring up the material editor. And then we just bring in a normal V-Ray material, just drag and drop. And then we can load a bitmap. Let's bring this node in. Let's load the rock depth 8K. I think for this placement 8K might be good. You can also load the 4K if you want to, but in this case I will definitely use the 8K map. Let's bring it here into the displacement. And let's make a quick test render. Oh, before we do that, you need to select a plane in the scene. Do a right click here on a material, assign material to selection. Now it's assigned, and now we can make a test render. And you can see already looking pretty good. If you're running into any artifacts or something like that, you can still change the displacement size. This will happen with probably every displacement map that you will ever buy, no matter from which source you buy it. No matter if you buy it on Chris' page or somewhere else. This is just simply what can happen with displacement maps, no matter what. So you can go here into maps in the material and change the displacement maybe to a value of 50. You can also do the same here with a normal map, maybe if you're running there into some problems and if you want to use it. And let's maybe make another test render. And this will give us a little bit less displacement, but probably also a little bit less artifacts if you're really planning on doing some close-up shots or something like that. Okay, so that's basically it. I think this was really easy for setting up the displacement map, of course. And yeah, in the next chapter we will talk about some more maps. Okay, so in this chapter we want to set up the roughness map. So let's bring in another bitmap node and let's load our roughness map. I think in this case for roughness map you are just fine if you're using the 4K version. Of course, you can also use the 8K version if you want to. But I think we should really save some megabytes where we can. So I think in this case I will just simply load the 4K map. And let me connect this here to the reflection glossiness. And then in the bitmap we also need to go down to output, and in the output we can set the map to invert. You have to do this for the roughness map to get the correct value. This is not really a problem from Chris' map. This is, let's say, a VRAY problem. So if you're setting up the roughness map, just simply go to output, set it to invert, and you should be just fine. Let's take a look here on the render. Probably not a lot has changed, just a little bit. In the end, when we are adding all the maps, we will get a little bit more. And so yeah, this was the roughness map, and in the next chapter we will talking about the other maps as well. Alright, so let's load our glossy maps. Let's get 2 bitmap nodes in this case, because we're having a high gloss map and a normal gloss map, as you can see. So we'll load the normal glossy map for now. And I will also load the high gloss map, both in 4K. And then we can bring in a mix node to mix those both together to get the right value. And then we can also play around with the mix node a little bit more if you want to have more glossiness or less glossiness and so on and so on. So let me get here this mix node, and we will just simply bring in color 1 and color 2. And then we can just simply click on this, and in the mix amount we can probably add, I think a color map is just fine. Let me bring in a color map. Let's connect this here to the mix map, and with the color map we can now control which map will be used. If this is 50% gray, both maps will be used equally, so 50-50%. And if we want to use only the first map, we can set this here to white. And if we only, the second map, sorry. If you only want to use this map, we can set this here to white. And if we want to only use this map here, the first one, the normal glossy one, we can set this here to black. And then you will see we'll only use this map. And every value in between this here in the grayscale will just simply give us a different mix between those 2 maps, as you can see right here when I'm moving the slider here. This will just simply give us a mix. And then we connect this here to the reflect map. And then we can make here some tests. So let's render this with 50% maybe. Looks like this. And we can also give this here, of course, different value. We can also bring this here to completely white, so we're only using this map. Then it will look like this, and so on and so on. I mean, of course, here in this picture you won't see it that hard, because this is a rock formation and it was shot on a really dry day, so this is why we are not getting so much glossiness here whatsoever. But of course, if you're playing around here a little bit more and changing maybe the maps and also changing the reflection glossiness map and so on and so on. I will show this in a later chapter. We can still get maybe something like a rainy day picture, something like that, because if the rock really gets wet, then of course it also has some glossiness going on, at least way more than here in this scene, but I will show you this later on. But this is the correct setup for the reflect map and for the high and the normal glossy map. So always use this mix node, and then with a color map you can simply control the value between those two bitmaps. Okay, so off to the next chapter. Okay, alright, so in this chapter we will add the bump map, and we don't really need to do much for it. It's basically the same with the displacement map, so we just get this map here and let's add a 8K bump. Maybe 4K would be fine enough, but I think 8K might be better. And let's drop this in, and let's maybe also start to name those channels here so we don't getting too confused. Let's call this here, what map was this again? This was the, oops, whoopsie poopsie. No, what am I doing here? Sorry for this one. I think I just made this too big. How can I make this smaller again? I have no clue. Oh, here we go. Okay, perfect. I think this was the glossy map. Okay, so let's call this normal gloss, and we call this here high gloss. And then we call this mix map here gloss mix, and I think I just overwrote this here. Sorry, I should have done this before, really. So we just know which are our maps. This can always help, and we call this here gloss control. No, you always need to double click that. Totally forget that. So I'm always overriding my own stuff, which is not so good. High gloss, okay, finally. And here we go, reflection glossiness. This is our roughness map, so let's just simply call this rough. And this is our displacement, so we just simply call this DEISP. And this is our bump map. So let's finally connect our bump map to the bump slot. Here we go. And then of course we can also control here the value. If we're going down here to maps, if the bump is right set to 30, this will, we can also make this higher here to 100, and this will just simply give us some really nice detail if we want to make close-up shots. So if you really would go closer now with the camera, you could really see how the bump map works. Of course, you can always give it more bump or less bump. So if you're planning close-up shots, you can always use the bump map to enhance this a little bit more, or maybe also try it maybe a little bit with the normal map. There are a lot of things that you can try out, but I think the bump map is normally the best way to go if you want to use, if you want to go for some close-up shots on those maps. Okay, so let's go off to the next chapter. Okay, so let's finally add some color to our picture. So we can just simply bring in our color map, and let's bring in a bitmap, another one, and let's load our color. I think 8K might be fine here. You can also go with the 4K, of course. And I would advise that you always use a color correction in between, so that you always can control this map here a little bit better, like right away. Give it maybe a little bit a different hue, you can give it more saturation, brightness, contrast, and so on and so on. So this is something I would always add when you're using the color map, and then we can connect this color correction here to the diffuse map. And let's call this map here quickly color, and this is our color correction. Okay, perfect. And let's make a test render and let's see what we get. And as you can see, now we're really starting to getting some really nice picture here with the color map added. And so yeah, as you can see, that's really easy. Some really small tricks are in there, not really something extremely special or something like that, but this is just a basic setup. So yeah, there is not really much to it, and in the next chapter I will show you some little tricks, and we will also add the ambient occlusion map finally. Okay, so here are some tips and tricks we can also add the ambient occlusion map, like I said before. Let's just simply drop in another bitmap and let's get our ambient occlusion. Maybe 4K might be good enough. And then we can set up here a composite node, and let's bring it exactly in here. If we drop this here onto this, let's say, connected cable, it will drop exactly in here, which is good. Okay, no, I did mess this up, sorry. Let's try this again, composite, and we want to add it to layer 1. And then we click on our composite node, add a second layer. Just a second, how do I do this again? Here, add new layer. And in the layer 2, we will add our ambient occlusion. So let me call this quickly AO. Perfect. And we can load this map here into layer 2. And then we set this AO bitmap here to multiply. Blah, 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 blah. Where is it? Multiply, hello? Here we go. Perfect. And what this ambient occlusion map does, it just simply enhances the shadows a little bit more on our map and on our render, which can sometimes help to also hide some artifacts and stuff like that, which is really, really good. You can just simply change here the opacity value from 0 to 100. So if we set this here to 0, we will get no ambient occlusion map whatsoever, as you can see here already in the preview on the composite map. And if we add this here to 100, we will get full ambient occlusion, which, like I said, can sometimes help to hide maybe some artifacts if you're really close up or something like that. Then I would try to add this ambient occlusion map as well and see if you can hide a few things, and also maybe play a little bit more with the bump map and the displacement to maybe get rid of those artifacts. Then, like I said before, we can also play a little bit more with the glossiness. We can always bring in here a color correction after the glossiness mix. Let's just simply drop it in here, and then we can maybe give this here a little bit more contrast or less contrast or whatsoever, whatever we are looking for. I mean, of course, you can also control those maps a little bit better inside of Photoshop if you really want to, but this is just a simple thing that you can do maybe in Max as well without jumping into Photoshop. And here in the roughness map, we should do the same. Let's maybe also give this here color correction so we can try this a little bit more here, give it a little bit more reflection. Let's make this more kind of white, and let's maybe make here test trend. And as you can see, now we're getting really a lot of glossiness. But like I said, if you're trying to maybe create something like a rainy day rock situation, or maybe the rock is wet for some, I don't know, a river is passing through or something like that, this might be the right way to go. So you're getting this little bit glossy, wet look whatsoever, and you can really play with those color corrections a lot to really get the right look, or you just simply do it in Photoshop. So this was just a little bit of tips and tricks, and I hope those were maybe a little bit helpful, and I think that's basically it. So those are really easy to set up, so there's nothing to it. I absolutely love Crease maps, and I think a lot of Hollywood studios love Crease maps as well. If you would know how many companies those maps are buying, which I'm not allowed to say, because some of them have some really tight contracts. Yeah, like I said, there are really a lot of people who are using those maps. I love them as well personally, and I think you will do as well. And as you can see, those maps are really easy to set up and really easy to control later on, so you can really get your desired look that you are after maybe. Okay, so thanks for listening. Have a really great day, and I'll catch you next time. Bye bye. Oh, and one last quick tip that I forgot. When you open up your browser here, your material editor, and go back to slate mode, what you can do, you can also save your material library, so you don't have to do this work over and over again. You only need to set it up once if you want to. Let's say this is our material that we just did. Let's maybe load a bitmap, a random one. Let's just simply get one of Chris textures here really quickly. Let's say, okay, let's go with the rock again. Let's see, here we have the color, and all the other maps are set up as well. I mean, you can imagine that, of course. Let's maybe create a cube in the scene. Quickly create standard primitive box. Okay, zack. Okay, perfect. Then we can just simply select this box, right click here, assign materials to selection. So now it's on the box. Maybe we give this here a little bit of a better few here, high quality, default shading, maybe facets, no. Okay, doesn't really matter right now. Let's just simply leave it at default shading, doesn't matter. Now we can switch the mode here. Or first of all, we want to do maybe a new material library. Let's just simply go here and let's, on this little arrow, and say new material library. And let's call this library maybe RDT, so we can save all our RDT textures in there. And then we switch to the slate material editor, sorry, to the compact material editor. And we take this little picky here, and now we can select our material from the object where it's assigned. So we just simply click on a box. Now we're getting our material right here. And then the only thing we need to do is put to library. And we save this in rdt.mat that we just created, and call this here rock. And if you have other textures from Chris, you can call them accordingly, of course. So this is our rock texture, and every time I want to make this rock texture again, I want to have it again in the scene, I can just simply go here and load my material. Get material is like that. Yes, you just simply click here on get material, then you can go here, RDT mat, open this up, and then drag and drop it on here, and then just simply drop this texture on any object that you like in the scene, and you are ready to go. So that was basically it. So you can save all your materials, of course, so you don't have to set it up over and over again. I mean, when you really bought maybe all the textures from Chris' website, you probably have a shitload of them, like maybe, I don't know, 100, 200, 300, 400, 400, 500, what do I know? And of course, it's kind of silly that you set up them over and over again. So this is a simple way to make your own RDT library right here, and then you can just simply choose which one you like and drag them in the scene, and so on and so on. So this was the last quick tip. I hope this was kind of interesting for you guys, and I'll see you soon. Bye bye.